The Galactic Concordat had ruled the stars for 12,000 years, and in all that time, they had never encountered anything they could not explain. 17 species lived under the banner of the Concordat, trading goods and knowledge across 10,000 worlds. Their civilizations intertwined like the roots of ancient trees. They had mapped every corner of their galaxy, cataloged every habitable world, and established contact with every intelligent species they had ever found. Or so they believed. Scholar Valith of the Kethri people sat alone in her research chamber, surrounded by holographic text that glowed soft blue in the darkness. She was old by her species standards. Her scales faded to a pale silver. Her eyes clouded with age, but still sharp with intelligence. For 60 years she had dedicated her life to a single obsession. And for 60 years her colleagues had called her a fool. She studied the forbidden verses. The verses were ancient beyond measure, older than the Concordat itself, passed down through oral tradition before being committed to digital memory. They spoke of impossible things, creatures from a world that should not exist, beings so strange and terrifying that most scholars dismissed them as pure fantasy. The verses called them humans. Valith traced her clawed finger over a passage she had read 10,000 times. The words burned into her memory like scars. They drank poison and called it water, the verse declared. They breathed fire and called it air. They broke their bones and grew stronger. They faced death and laughed. The homeworld described in the verses was a nightmare given form, a planet where molten rock burst from the ground without warning, where the sky itself could turn against you with lightning and wind and walls of water falling from above, a world where the very ground shook and split open, where ice covered half the surface for part of each year, where radiation from the central star caused the inhabitants' own cells to turn against them. And yet, according to the verses, the humans had thrived there. They had not merely survived their death world, they had conquered it, bending its terrible nature to their will through nothing but stubbornness and creativity. The verses spoke of their wars, conflicts so brutal and widespread that they should have driven the species to extinction 100 times over. But the humans never stayed dead. Every catastrophe only made them more determined. Every setback only fueled their resolve. Every extinction-level event was just another problem to be solved. Valith had searched for 60 years to find proof that humans were real. She had scoured ancient databases, traveled to forgotten archives on dying worlds, interviewed species whose memories stretched back millennia. She had found nothing, no artifacts, no remains, no homeworld matching the description in the verses. Her colleagues assured her that this was because humans had never existed, that they were simply a mythological archetype, invented by ancient spacers to explain the universe's cruelty, a cautionary tale, they said, a story to remind us how fortunate we are to live on gentle worlds. But Valith could not accept this explanation. The verses were too detailed, too consistent across cultures that had never contacted each other. 17 different species had variations of the human myth, and all of them agreed on the fundamental details: the forward-facing eyes of a predator, the endoskeleton hidden beneath soft, vulnerable flesh, the impossible resilience, the terrifying creativity somewhere out there. Valith believed humanity was real. She was reviewing the same passage for the 10,000th time when her communication console erupted with urgent signals. Priority alerts cascaded across her screens, each one marked with the highest classification level she had ever seen. She opened the first message with trembling claws. Detection anomaly at Outer Veil Station 7. The report read, unknown fleet configuration, unknown species. Approach vector suggests extragalactic origin. Valith felt her heart stop beating. Extragalactic. Nothing came from outside the galaxy. Nothing could survive the journey across the void between galaxies. The vast empty darkness where no stars burned and no world spun. The distances were too great, the time too long. The challenges too numerous. Every species in the Concordat agreed on this fundamental truth. Interstellar travel was possible. But intergalactic travel was suicide, and yet something was coming from the void. Valith pulled up the sensor data with shaking hands, her eyes struggling to process what she was seeing. The fleet was massive, hundreds of vessels of varying sizes. Their configurations unlike anything in the Concordat database. The ships were ugly by any civilized standard, their hulls scarred and pitted, covered in patches and repairs that suggested centuries of hard use. Some of the vessels appeared to be ancient, their design language so outdated that Valith could not even guess at their original purpose. And they were still coming, still moving, still operational despite looking like they should have fallen apart long ago. The communication console chirped again. And this time the message was addressed directly to her scholar Valith. The High Council's seal glowed at the top of the transmission. Your presence is required immediately. The Concordat requires your expertise. She read the words 3 times before their meaning penetrated her shocked mind. They were calling her after 60 years of ridicule. After 6 decades of being dismissed as an eccentric fool chasing fairy tales. The High Council was summoning her because something was coming from the impossible void, something that matched. No known species, something that had crossed the uncrossable. Darkness Valith gathered her research with hands that would not stop trembling, her mind racing through possibilities she had spent her entire life preparing for. She had always believed this day would come. She had always known, deep in her bones, that the verses were true now. As she hurried toward the transport that would carry her to the council chambers, she felt something she had not experienced in decades. Fear, because if humanity was real, if the verses were true, then all the terrible things they described were true as well. The wars, the violence, the impossible resilience, the creativity that could reshape worlds. The stubbornness that could outlast stars. Valith had spent 60 years hoping to find humans now. As the unknown fleet drew closer with every passing moment, she found herself wondering if the galaxy was ready for what she had been searching for. The old songs were about to become reality, and reality, she suspected, would be far more terrifying than any myth. The diplomatic fleet of the Galactic Concordat was the most magnificent armada ever assembled in recorded history. 300 vessels from 17 different species, their hulls gleaming with fresh polish, their weapon systems primed, but hidden behind elegant facades of peace. They carried ambassadors, scholars, military observers, and enough firepower to glass a planet if negotiations failed. High Admiral Korath of the Velm stood on the bridge of the flagship, his massive frame rigid with tension as he watched his sensor displays. This unknown fleet had stopped at the coordinates now designated Contact Point 0. Holding position as if waiting for them, all ships report ready, his tactical officer announced. A voice carefully controlled, despite the fear Korath could smell on her. Formation is optimal for both diplomatic approach and rapid combat deployment. Korath acknowledged the report with a grunt, his 4 eyes never leaving the display. He had commanded fleets for 200 years and had never seen anything like this. The unknown vessels were hideous, where Concordat ships were smooth and elegant, designed to inspire awe and project power. These ships looked like they had been assembled from wreckage. Mismatched hull plating covered their surfaces, some sections clearly newer than others, creating a patchwork effect that offended Korath's military sensibilities. Scorch marks and impact craters dotted their surfaces, evidence of battles fought and survived. The largest vessel at the center of the formation was particularly disturbing. It was ancient, so old that its design language bore no resemblance to anything in the Concordat database, yet it was still operational, still holding formation, still somehow functioning after what must have been centuries of service. Open communications, Korath ordered. Standard first contact protocol. The communications officer worked a console, and after a moment that stretched into eternity, a response came. Channel open, she reported, her voice suddenly strange. They are accepting visual communication. The main display flickered, and Korath felt his heart seize in his chest. The being that appeared on screen was a nightmare given form. It stood on two legs like some species of the Concordat. But everything else about it was wrong. Its eyes faced forward, the unmistakable configuration of a predator species, and they held an intelligence that made Korath want to flee. Its endoskeleton was visible beneath soft, vulnerable-looking flesh, and it moved with a fluid grace that suggested coiled violence barely contained behind it. More of the creatures worked at consoles, their forms casting shadows that seemed to writhe with implied threat. I am Captain Chen Wei of the Generation Fleet Perseverance. The creature spoke, its voice rendered in perfect Concordat standard by some translation system. We come in peace. We mean no harm to you or your people. Korath could not speak. His throat had closed, his body paralyzed by recognition that bypassed his conscious mind. He knew this creature. Every child in the Concordat knew this creature. Forbidden verses had described it perfectly. You are human. Scholar Valeth's voice cut through the stunned silence of the bridge, her tone a mixture of terror and vindication. You are real. The creature on the screen, the human, tilted its head in a gesture that somehow conveyed curiosity. You know of us? It said. Not a question, but a statement of recognition. That is unexpected. We did not think anyone would remember. Remember, Valeth stepped forward, her scales rattling with barely contained emotion. Your species is the subject of our oldest myths. Our children are taught songs about you. Songs meant to frighten them into obedience. The human's face changed, its lips pulling back to reveal teeth. Korath reached for his weapon before he realized the expression was meant to convey amusement, not aggression. We are a scary bedtime story, the human said. That is actually kind of flattering. I will have to tell the others. Behind Korath, he heard one of his officers collapse, the stress too much for her system. Others were trembling, fighting the instinct to run that every prey species felt in the presence of a predator. Valeth stepped even closer to the screen, her fear forgotten in the face of questions she had waited 60 years to ask. Where did you come from? She demanded. How did you cross the void between galaxies? Nothing can survive that journey. The human's expression changed again, becoming something softer, something that might have been sadness on a Concordat face. Our homeworld was dying, Captain Chen said. Our sun was failing faster than our scientists had predicted. We had a choice between staying and dying or leaving and maybe dying. We chose to leave, but the void, Valeth pressed. The distances are impossible. The journey would take thousands of years, 1,327 years, the human confirmed. That is how long we have been traveling. 53 generations have been born and died on these ships since we left Earth. The number struck Korath like a physical blow. 13 centuries. These creatures had been traveling through the empty void between galaxies for longer than some Concordat. Species had possessed spaceflight. They had been born, lived, and died in the darkness, generation after generation, never knowing if they would find a new home. How did you survive? Valeth asked, her voice barely a whisper. Captain Chen's face became hard, her predator eyes gaining an edge that made Korath's survival instincts scream. We did not all survive, she said. When we left Earth, there were 2 million of us. Now there are less than 300,000. The void took the rest. She paused, and something terrible moved behind her eyes. The void is not empty, she continued. There are things out there in the dark between galaxies. Things that do not like visitors. We fought them, Every year for 13 centuries, we fought them. And we kept going. The bridge had gone completely silent. Every member of the Concordat fleet was listening. Their communication systems carrying Captain Chun's words to 300 ships. "We are tired," Captain Chun said. And for the first time, Karth could see the exhaustion behind her predator eyes. "We have been fighting and running and dying for longer than your records remember us. All we want is a place to stop, a world where our children can grow under a sun. Is there room for us in your galaxy?" Karth found his voice at last, though it emerged rough and unsteady. "You crossed the void between galaxies," he said. "You fought unknown horrors for 1,300 years. You lost millions of your people. And you come to us, asking permission to settle. We have seen too much death." Captain Chun replied, "We do not want to bring more. If there is no room for us, we will keep going. We have survived this long. We can survive longer." Valith turned to Korth, her eyes bright with an emotion he could not name. "High Admiral," she said, "the myths are true. All of them. Do you understand what that means?" Korth looked at the battered fleet on his sensors. Ships held together by stubbornness and hope. He looked at the creature on his screen. A predator asking politely for a place to rest. He thought about the Forbidden Verses. All the terrible and wonderful things they described, and he realized that the universe had just become a much larger and stranger place. "Yes," he said slowly, "I believe I am beginning to understand." The news of humanity's arrival spread through the galactic Concordat like fire through dry grass within hours of first contact. Every world in the galaxy knew that the myths were true, that the monsters from the Forbidden Verses had emerged from the void between galaxies. Panic seized entire populations on the Threllian homeworld. Millions fled to underground shelters. Convinced that the end times had arrived, the Vorn Collective declared a state of emergency and began mobilizing their entire military force. Religious movements that had predicted humanity's return from millennia split apart and reformed overnight. Their prophecies suddenly validated in ways none had expected, and through it all, the human fleet waited patiently at contact point zero, making no aggressive moves. Responding to every communication with calm and measured word, scholar Valith watched the chaos unfold from her new posting aboard the human flagship, feeling as though she had stepped into a dream that was quickly becoming a nightmare. The High Council had appointed her as cultural liaison, the only being in the Concordat who had studied humanity for her entire life. Now she walked the corridors of a human vessel, surrounded by the very creatures she had spent 6 decades researching. It was nothing like she had expected. The humans moved around her with careful courtesy, always ensuring she had space, always speaking softly as though aware that their predator appearance frightened her. They smiled frequently, that strange expression where they showed their teeth, and Valith had learned to recognize it as a sign of friendship rather than threat. But it was their ship that truly fascinated her. The corridor walls were covered with images, photographs and paintings and drawings that depicted landscapes she did not recognize. Earth. A young human named Marcus explained when he noticed her staring. "These are pictures of our homeworld. My great-great-grandmother painted this one when she was a child. Before she died, Valith studied the painting. A crude but heartfelt depiction of mountains and green valleys under a yellow sun. You keep images of a world you have never seen," she said. "A world that no longer exists as it was." Marcus nodded, his expression becoming distant in a way that Valith had come to recognize as sadness. "We carry Earth with us," he said. "In our art, our stories, our songs, our bodies have never touched its soil. But our hearts have never left." This, Valith realized, was something the verses had never mentioned. The humans were not just survivors, not just warriors, not just the terrifying creatures of myth. They were mourners, an entire species grieving for a home they could never return to. She found Captain Chen in the command center. the older human woman standing before a holographic display that showed the entire human fleet, 13 centuries of repairs and modifications, had transformed the original vessels into something unrecognizable. Their designs evolved through necessity rather than planning. Scholar Valeth. Chun acknowledged her with a nod. I hope my people have been treating you well. They have been more than kind, Valeth replied. I came to ask you something. If you are willing, ask anything. We have no secrets from you. Not anymore. Valeth gathered her courage, aware that her next question might be impolite by human standards. The verses speak of your wars, she said. They describe your species as the most violent in the universe. Beings who could not stop fighting even when faced with extinction. Is this true? Chun was silent for a long moment, her predator eyes fixed on the holographic display. Yes, she finally said. It is true. We nearly destroyed ourselves more times than I can count. Nuclear weapons, biological warfare, climate collapse. We were very good at creating ways to die. Then how did you survive long enough to reach the stars? Chun turned to face her, and Valeth saw something ancient in her eyes. A weight of history that no living being should have to carry, because we were also very good at refusing to die, Chun said. Every time we knocked ourselves down, we got back up. Every catastrophe just made us more determined to survive. It is the contradiction at the heart of our species. We are capable of terrible destruction and incredible creation. Sometimes in the same breath, she gestured to the display, to the battered fleet that had crossed the impossible void. These ships are our legacy, she continued. When Earth's sun began to fail, we could have spent our remaining time fighting over resources. Many thought we would. Instead, we built a fleet. We set aside our differences. Every nation, every people, every faction. Because we finally had something bigger than our old hatreds to focus on. Survival. Valeth said. Survival. Chun agreed. It turns out that is the one thing humans will always choose. Even when it seems impossible, even when every odd is against us. We will fight, and we will adapt, and we will endure. She pulled up a new display, showing a timeline that made Valeth's breath catch. 1,300 years, Chun said. 53 generations born in the void. We fought the hollow. Those things in the dark between galaxies that feed on life and light. We lost battles, we lost ships, we lost millions of our people. But we never stopped fighting, never stopped moving, never stopped believing that somewhere out there was a place for us. The hollow, Valeth repeated, the word sending chills through her scales. The verses mention creatures of darkness. But I thought they were metaphors. They are very real, Chun's voice hardened. And they are why I need to be honest with you. Scholar, we did not just happen to find your galaxy. We were being chased. The admission hit Valeth like a physical blow, chased. The hollow follow life, Chun explained. They are drawn to it like predators to prey. We have been fighting a running battle across the void for 13 centuries. Every time we thought we had escaped them. They found us again. They are still coming, Scholar. They followed us here. Valeth felt the deck sway beneath her feet. Though she knew the ship's gravity was perfectly stable. You have brought a war to our galaxy, she whispered. Not intentionally, Chun said, her voice heavy with guilt. We hoped we had finally outrun them. We hoped the distances were too great even for them. But our long-range sensors detected movement in the void behind us. They are still years away, maybe decades. But they are coming. Why are you telling me this? Chun met her eyes. Predator to prey, but there was no threat in her gaze. Only desperate honesty, because you need to know, she said. Your Concordat has been at peace for millennia. Your species have forgotten what it means to truly fight for survival. When the hollow come, and they will come. You will need to be ready. She reached out and placed her soft, strange hand on Valeth's scaled arm. a gesture of connection that bridged the gap between their species. "We brought this threat to your doorstep," Chun said. "We will do everything in our power to help you face it. We have been fighting the Hollow for 1,300 years. We know their weaknesses, their patterns, their fears. We can teach you." Valith looked into the human's eyes and saw something she had not expected: hope. Despite 13 centuries of loss, despite bringing war to a peaceful galaxy, despite everything, the humans still believed they could win. And in that moment, Valith began to understand why the forbidden verses had been written with such awe and terror. Humanity was not just violent or resilient or creative. Humanity was hope that refused to die, even in the darkest void between galaxies. 3 years passed since humanity's arrival, and the galaxy had slowly begun to accept the impossible. The human fleet had been granted settlement rights on a world called Kethro 7, a harsh planet on the edge of Concordat space that no other species wanted. The world had crushing gravity, violent weather systems, and soil that required years of treatment before it could grow crops. The humans called it perfect. Valith visited the colony regularly, watching in amazement as the humans transformed their hostile new home through sheer determination. They built shelters that could withstand the violent storms, developed new crops that thrived in the difficult soil, and somehow managed to laugh and sing while doing work that would have broken any other species. Their children played in gravity that would have crippled a Kethri, running and jumping with joy that seemed impossible given their people's tragic history. They adapt, Valith reported to the High Council. It is not just survival. They thrive in conditions that should destroy them. The verses were not exaggerations, if anything. They understated humanity's resilience, but the peace could not last on a cold morning in the 3rd year. Every sensor station in the outer regions of Concordat space detected the same impossible readings. The Hollow had arrived. They emerged from the void like a tide of darkness. Their vessels, unlike anything in nature or technology, they were not ships in any conventional sense, but living nightmares, creatures that existed in the space between dimensions and fed on the light of stars. There were thousands of them, perhaps millions. Their numbers so vast that they blotted out entire sections of the sky. The Concordat military responded as they had been trained, forming defensive lines and preparing diplomatic channels. They had never faced a true enemy, never fought a war that threatened their existence. They did not understand what they were dealing with. The first battle lasted less than an hour. 3 Concordat fleets, nearly 1,000 vessels representing the finest military technology in the galaxy, were annihilated. The Hollow did not negotiate, did not communicate, did not pause. They simply consumed, absorbing energy and matter and life into their impossible forms within a week. 3 worlds had gone silent. Their populations vanished. Their stars dimmed as the Hollow-fed panic became terror, and terror became despair. The High Council gathered in emergency session, their faces drawn with fear, their voices trembling as they debated options that did not exist. "We must surrender," the Vorn representative argued. "Offer them whatever they want. Perhaps they can be appeased." "They cannot be appeased." Captain Chun's voice cut through the chamber as she strode into the council hall. Uninvited but unchallenged. "We have tried. 1,300 years. We have tried every form of communication, every offering of peace, every possible negotiation. The Hollow do not want resources or territory or submission. They want everything, every star, every world, every living thing, and they will not stop until they have consumed it all." The council stared at her, the mythical humans standing before them in battered armor that had seen more combat than their entire military history combined. "Then, what do you suggest?" the Kethri representative asked. "Our fleets are destroyed. Our people are dying. What can we possibly do against such an enemy?" Chun smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. "You fight," she said. You stop thinking about surrender and start thinking about survival. You remember that your ancestors were not always peaceful traders and diplomats. That somewhere in your genetic memory, you know how to be predators too. She activated a holographic display, filling the chamber with tactical data that made several council members gasp. We have been fighting the Hollow for 13 centuries, Chun continued. We have learned their weaknesses, their patterns, their vulnerabilities. They're not invincible. They can be hurt. They can be killed. They can be driven back. We have done it before. And we can teach you how to do it now. Your fleet is tiny, the Vorn representative protested. Even with your knowledge. What difference can a few hundred ships make? Our fleet will make no difference at all, Chun agreed. But your fleet can. You have thousands of vessels, millions of soldiers. Resources we could only dream of during our long journey. What you lack is not capability, but will. You have forgotten how to fight because you have never needed to. We are here to remind you. She uploaded files to the council systems. Schematics and tactics and strategies refined through more than a millennium of desperate warfare. Your ships are beautiful, she said. Elegant and efficient and completely unprepared for war. We are going to change that. We are going to take your pretty vessels and turn them into weapons. We are going to take your peaceful citizens and teach them how to become warriors. And we are going to show the Hollow that this galaxy is not easy prey. High Admiral Korath, who had been standing silently at the edge of the chamber, stepped forward. You are asking us to change everything we are, he said. To abandon 12,000 years of civilization and become something new. I'm asking you to survive, Chun replied. The choice you face is simple, change or die. Your ancestors faced similar choices, or they would not have survived long enough to build your Concordat. The universe is not kind, and it is not fair. It does not care about your traditions or your values or your peaceful ideals. The Hollow are coming, and they will consume everything unless you stop them. She looked around the chamber, meeting the eyes of every council member in turn. We brought this enemy to your door, she said. That weight sits on our souls, and it will never leave. But we also brought something else. Knowledge, experience, hope. We have faced the darkness for 1,300 years. And we are still here. We can teach you how to stand against it. If you are willing to learn. The chamber was silent. The weight of the decision pressing down on everyone present. Valith found herself speaking before she realized. She had risen from her seat. The forbidden verses speak of humanity's terrible creativity, she said. Their ability to reshape worlds and break the rules that bind other species. I have spent my life studying these myths. And I have spent 3 years among the humans themselves. They are everything the verses claimed. And more, if they say we can fight the Hollow. I believe them. More voices joined hers. A growing chorus of support that spread through the chamber like ripples in water. Captain Chun watched with an expression Valith could not quite read. Something between hope and grief. Thank you, the human said quietly. Now let us get to work. We have a galaxy to save.